Hey,
So,
man, how you doing?
hey,
What's going on? Are they rolling?
Jules Allen.
See, we caught them off guard. They're not ready.
This is Jules Allen.
And McArthur Binion,
Cool.
the very McArthur Binion.
And we would like to have a brief conversation about our upcoming exhibition. The first time we've ever shown together. Well, once a little bit. We first showed together at in Lower Manhattan, in a program called Art on the Beach, and I curated a show for a house that was built by David Hammons called Delta House. So that was the only show we were ever in. So this is the second show, and I like to say to whoever, I've long admired Jules and his work. And I'm very pleased to be able to have this exhibition with him. Bam.
Yeah, that says it for me as well.
Cool.
Cheers. So first, I want to say thank you. Don't jump the gun. Thank you very much, man, for the invitation.
There's two things. I'm in New York from Detroit in 1973. And what happened between 73 and 1979, the 70s, is that in my interpretation, all the people that I refer to as second generation black avant-garde, we all moved to New York in the 70s because for me it was I was just so curious about, okay, in the 1940s, early 50s, the painters that were working in New York that were later called abstract expressionist painters. I'm just curious, how they move, visually, from basic cubism to pure abstraction so fast.
You want to know what you told me?
What did I tell you?
The music.
Yeah.
And it was Charlie Parker.
No, they learned improvisation from the black bebop
That's right.
musical artists.
That's right. That's right.
Who taught them improvisation. I know for a fact, and you could probably find this and do your research. The main hub of the art world, and also there was anything called the art world into the 80s, but it was happening they're in the Village. I forget the names of the galleries. I can think of it, but they were on 9th and 10th Street, and the 5 spot was on 8th Street. They would go to the clubs. And hearing music. So for me, that was something that I wanted. And so all of these young black artists, we all moved there and we were all influenced by music and the things that we were reading about.
That was, I remember once again something you said early on when we were talking about painting and how the music influenced the art. And I remember you said, I'll never forget it, you said, they were playing the music and they were making money. That the abstract form evidenced a possibility.
Yeah,
because you could actually make a living.
You can make a living. Bebop music was the most adventurous.
Look, I grew up in a household. I grew up in a household, man. I grew up in a household. Whatever else was going on in the country, my frame of reference was Duke Ellington and Count Basie. Whatever else the country may have been saying about black people or people of color, that didn't happen.
That term.
That once I came in the house,
it was like bam.
All that was thrown out the window. Because my father had Lester Young on.
I want to hear you talk about a little bit about not your mentor, but your teacher in graduate school.
You're talking about Roy De Carava?
Yeah.
That teacher?
Yeah.
I did 2 graduate programs, one in psychology and one in fine art. And what our beloved Mr. Binion is referring to, my MFA program, I studied with Roy De Carava, the very important, influential.
I'll say the eminent.
Right. photographer who I came to New York to meet.
Yeah.
And he suggested that I come to New York to live. Roy DeGarava is one of the reasons I moved to New York. Actually, Frank Stewart, when I met Frank Stewart in New York, Frank Stewart, the photographer.
Frank Budge as well. Yeah.
Took me to meet Roy. I was looking for Roy at the Studio Museum. I went to the Studio Museum looking for Roy, and Frank was there working, and he took me to meet Roy, and Roy and I began to talk, and Roy embraced me based on the portfolio that I had brought to show him.
Before school.
Before school.
Like I also add that he inherited Roy's studio.
I did.
This is amazing.
Not only that, I got it from I got it from the other person whom I held in as high regard.
Who?
Buford Smith.
Buford Smith, the
Who
photographer.
Buford Smith was the most substantial photographer for me in the world of black photographers.
But I would say, like from my limited view, like a photographer, that you have taken what those guys did and elevated it.
Well, I don't know if I've elevated it. I've moved it in a direction.
Same thing.
I've moved it in a direction that is mine and realized visually at this point. But I came through that. I mean, and going to graduate school with Roy was very interesting, man. We argued a lot.
Good.
But Roy was also somebody who.
You argued a lot. That's cool.
Oh, we argued endlessly, man. But Roy was somebody who, at some point, psychologically grabbed me by the collar
And said, "Listen up.
Dig this man."
Yeah.
And I was like, and he was dead on. He was dead on. You hear me?
Yeah.
He cut right through all of it.
Yeah.
And nailed me, man.
But you know, for me, the reason I lean toward your work, because like I think it's much more difficult to make like abstract, like a photography.
There's a lot of good photographers, man. I tell you who can do it. For me, the idea was to create a balance between the reality and the abstract, or the documentary, or the metaphorical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was to somehow bring those components together so that I could tell the story through a reality-based image, but the idea belongs specific to a particular culture. And through realizing a particular culture, you could share it with the rest of the world, and it becomes universal. McArthur, you know all this stuff. McArthur, you know all this stuff. I mean, I've been looking at your paintings, man, and talking with you for years, man. And I mean, 40. I think one of the things that's really helped is having a contemporary like yourself.
Thank you very much. Like I was just reminded, the first time I saw your work, he did the announcement for a mutual, really amazing good friend of ours named Lawrence Butch Morris.
Right.
And what he did, he took, Butch was a cornet player, mostly a composer, amazing composer. What he did, he took the cornet all apart, all the pieces, like everything, every little piece that came up, and he
put it on a piece. Listen, he standing there with me.
Yeah.
Put it on a piece of glass, and I had to go underneath the glass.
Underneath it? Wow.
I was underneath the glass shooting up with all these parts. And look, with Lawrence Butch Morris standing going, I don't know, man. Maybe we should try this. I don't know, man.
Sounds like
I don't know, man. But I was like, Butch, would you stop? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Jules, I don't know. Do you love me? Man. Whew.
Yeah.
That was great.
But that's the first time I saw the work. Like, and also, this is in the early 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
And back then, the world was much smaller. The term, like, art world hadn't been, like, invented yet. I think that was, like, 82, 83. So there was this group of, like, what I call second-generation black avant-garde. We were basically ostracized from the art, from the white art galleries, the main musical venues, etc. And so we all moved closer to each other.
But that was also, we spoke the same language.
Oh, of course.
Initially, you know what I mean? We all found ourselves speaking the same language.
No,
so
as a matter of fact, we all came to New York looking for each other.
And
we found each other.
that was the thing that when I went back to California after I had come here and I said I moved to New York, people just didn't know what I was talking about. Because I had said I had met so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and I'm going to New York.
Yeah.
And this was in '78.
Right.
And people talk about going to New York like it's this big thing or this out-of-the-world experience.
It was that.
But, well, one of the things that you learn to do is, which I didn't really know that well about conceptually, but you plan.
You plan, but also at this time in our lives in the world, New York was basically the only place where it was all that.
For me, it was where it was.
It was heaven, man.
Look, man, the first time I came to New York when I got out of the Army, I came to New York, man, and I was 20 years old.
Right. Like, and also in the 70s, like by the time you moved, the avant-garde music, I mean, it was like we would go to 3 clubs every night.
Well, that was the thing that was so hip for me on one level, but on the other side was such a struggle because I was going to hear all this creative stuff in music and theater and dance, but photography was very conservative still. And so I was trying to figure out how you're going to translate this stuff when I'm listening to Jerome Cooper or Sun Ra.
Jerome Cooper, God.
Right? Henry Threadgill, the Art Ensemble of Chicago, man. I mean, Cecil Taylor, I mean.
Julius Hemphill.
Julius Hemphill, man, come on, man. And then go make photographs that were like, ho-hum.
At that time, I think the person that was in the vanguard of new photography was a photographer named Ralph Gibson. Ralph Gibson, I think.
Look, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
Am I right?
Gibson, like this.
Am I right?
Like this. Do you hear me? Like this.
Yeah.
Like this.
Right.
Like this. Like this.
Yeah.
Oh, Ralph Gibson was an amazing influence on me early on. Formally.
Yeah. Like when I came to New York in '73, I mean, there was like Jack Whitten,
right?
William Williams, Peter Bradley,
right?
Daniel Johnson,
right?
What's my boy from California, from Mississippi? Overstreet was kind of going down because he became a big landlord.
See, I don't know painting well enough because I didn't really start looking at painting the way I've learned to look through you and other people until I came to New York. I didn't really, the first time I went to see a de Kooning show, I was swept off my feet, man, to be honest.
He was a bad boy.
I sat there like this.
Like, that's a thing I think that when we began to mature as artists, it was a much smaller world. It was a much smaller world, and in a way it was much harder because the audience was very, very, very small.
Everybody we knew all knew everything about everything else.
Exactly.
We all knew painting, music, dance, poetry, literature. We all knew it.
And each other.
And each other. But it
was a beautiful time. Like, I think one thing that the ancestors, which I never use this word, but the ancestors taught me, like my ancestors, and my ancestors visually are black and white.
Right.
Black, white, and other.
Right.
But they taught me, you got to bring something that you personally own, like, to the game.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
So the goal was like to make work that only you can make.
To find out self-discovery is the whole thing. Self-actualization is a tough, Miles said it beautifully. It takes a long time to learn to play like yourself. You know, one of the things about deciding to study psychology was once you get to a point, I was at a point in photography where I realized I didn't have enough information to go on about what I wanted to photograph. And I went to my teacher in undergraduate school and said, are there any black photographers? Because all I knew was Edward Weston and Eugene Smith and Cartier-Bresson and, you know, all these wonderful photographers. But he's the one that told me about Roy de Carava. And then when I wanted to go to graduate school and get an MFA in photography, there was no one I wanted to study with. No one.
But him.
Not even him at that point, because I didn't know him yet.
I see.
But what I did know was that if I'm going to continue in this, I'm going to have to learn how to see who I am and develop a sense of self through a clinical understanding of human behavior.
Like, so, therefore, psychology.
Therefore, psychology.
Cool.
Baby.
This is why I think this show and this time in your life is very, very good for you and us, because you have a very complete analysis of your whole story. And so, therefore, someone can look at you and your work and your books, and like there's a map there for someone to follow.
Yeah.
So,
It's very nice of you to say that.
Yeah.
How did you learn how to draw? And why did you start drawing?
Okay. Like every time I start to tell the story, I start to cry.
Good.
So
That means my psychology is working.
So, continue the story. When I moved back to Detroit from New York after that great job as like when I started Modern Art for the first time, I went back to school. I was still a writing major. I was a creative writing major, but still, like, the idea about becoming like an artist was slowly creeping up on me because my friends were all musical. They were music majors or art majors, and so it took me, I dropped out of school again, like I went to Europe for the first time. And I came back and it took me 2 years to have enough nerve to take a drawing class. I'd never drawn before.
Well, why did you take a drawing class?
Because I wanted to learn the structural way of like learning how to control your hand-eye before you start to paint. Because I still think painting is a really hard thing to do.
Yes.
And I took a class. It was fall 1960, it was the year before we did Woodstock. It was 68. I had just come back from Europe. And I remember exactly what I was wearing. And I went to this class, I was 20, I just turned 22. And out of this class, I'd never drawn before. And like I was in this class, all these kids that I've been drawing all their lives. And so we had to draw, he gave us the material, you had to have the charcoal paper, newsprint, and there was a still life. And I was a really good athlete. I was good at most everything I'd ever done. I had nothing, nothing. And what I did, when class was over, I rolled a joint, smoked it, and started crying like a baby.
Why?
The emotional impossibility of my attempt had totally failed.
Right.
And that day, I decided, and that day on, I drew every day for 2 years straight and got it.
You know what? You and I have never talked about this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah.
It's almost identical to my experience in photography.
Wow.
I saw Edward Weston's bell pepper and didn't know what it was. I thought I was the slickest cat that ever lived. All these photographs, portraits, landscape, a bell pepper. I couldn't translate it.
You couldn't see it.
I could not see it.
Wow.
And I sat there in class and everybody was talking about this image and I didn't know what they were talking about, McArthur. I was like, this can't be true.
Yeah.
This cannot be true.
Right.
From then on,
Boom.
every day,
Every day.
every day, baby.